graphic design and fine art printing services. Welcome once again to this webinar called Bengaluru Chronicle, presented to you by Mr. PV. This is a 1.5 hour session. You can ask the questions in the Q&A box, answer to be provided at the end of the session. Now, I would like to share a few words about PV. PV is a people photographer and creative entrepreneur based in Bangalore. He co-founded Thalam, a creative space and creative village with his good friend Dilip Param. He's a chemical engineer with an MBA in marketing. Currently, he is also associated with Nikon School India as a photography mentor for Karnataka region and has mentored more than 4,000 budding photographers in the last 4 years. He's a photo walk buff with close to 450 photo walks executed in Bangalore and across India. Recently, his works were exhibited at Landskrona Photo 2019, Sweden, and Pingyao International Photography Festival 2019, China. In 2018, he won the prestigious Sahapedia Frames Grant as one of the 25 photographers from across India and documenting the inscription stones of Bengaluru. In November 19, he was part of the photo management team and contributed over 40 images for Discovering Bengaluru, books written by Meera Iyer. Today, he'll be sharing his photography experience documenting Bangalore through this webinar, Bengaluru Chronicle. I present to you PV, the people's photographer. PV, please take it up from here.
Thank you so much, Naufal. Thank you so much, Sri Kumar, for introducing me here. Thank you so much, Honeycomb Creative, for this opportunity. It's been a great pleasure being with you all in this session, and some of my friends are also on this, so it's quite interesting. I could see my professor also in the session, one of my professors in the session. So this session is truly going to be a photography session where I'm going to be talking how I went about documenting Bangalore in the last so many years after making Bangalore my home since 2004. So I moved in to Bangalore after my graduation and then my master's in Pondicherry University. 2004 when I moved to Bangalore for my internship, right? Since then, I stayed back in Bangalore with a small gap. I went to Chennai for like 4 months or something, and then I came back to Bangalore. So photography was always there with me since maybe I think since 1996, 97, when there was a point and shoot cameras, the soapbox camera that we used to have 300 rupees, the Kodak KB10. Since then, I started my photography thing, but seriously got into photography after moving into Bangalore. So I can very much say when I moved into Bangalore, maybe I used to know 5 friends in the city. But today it is completely swapped, and all that happened to me in photography has happened in Bangalore, right? So that's why I document, give this as a thing to the city. Whatever the city gave to me, it's more of a giving back to the city. So today's session will cover some of the things, some of the series of images that I created, which is specifically connected to the waste management, the water management, the transport management, the regular problems of any metro city. So that will be one set of images that I'll be kind of presenting. Then my career inspiration, because I come from the advertising background, I'm a marketing guy. So a small series on something which is connected to advertising. Then the built heritage that is there in the city and the cultural heritage that is there in the city. So there are like a couple of series of images, but we'll just touch upon something. So you'll get a broad perspective in terms of what is Bangalore and then how Bangalore can be seen with a different light, in a picture, right? So I'm just going to open up, I'll just start sharing my screen. So I think you have to enable me as a co-host or something. So then I'll be able to share it. Sri Kumar?
Naufal, I think you have to...
I think you can just try sharing, PV.
No, I tried. It says host disabled attending. So you make me as a co-host or something, so then I'll be able to share.
Yeah. Just try now.
Okay. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm able to share this. Let me just open my presentation. Okay. Do you guys see my presentation? Is it visible?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Just make it in full screen mode. That's it.
Yes. Is this okay now?
Yes.
Is it visible in full screen?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Perfect. So I call this as Bengaluru Chronicle since the time I moved to Bangalore in 2004. Thanks to these other partners who are involved in this, Shrishti, Ford, Photostop, and of course Honeycomb for making this happen today. So my first set of images when I moved into Bangalore, if for anybody's right, any photographer, you get a digital camera in hand. Though I had a film camera in 96 and then 2003, 2004, 2005. But the moment I moved to Bangalore after my work, I got a small digital camera. Went ahead shooting random things in Bangalore. So when I went to Bannerghatta, I put this intentionally, this picture, because this is more relevant in today's situation where we are all inside and the whole world is outside. This is from Bannerghatta Park, which is shot way back in 2006, I think. The right side picture that you see is UB City, which was that time getting built, right? So like any generally anybody who's a startup, right? I shot everything, right? The left side picture is from Cubbon Park, the right side picture is the MG Road that we always have. The HSBC building is still there in this, but the metro covers so much of the city, the view of this building. So this is the first camera that I ever bought in digital format. So I went and shoot a lot of these images in Bangalore. Those days, we didn't have Facebook or Instagram or these 500 pics and all this. So we used to have something called as Flickr. So Flickr, after some time, it was taken over by Yahoo, and then that is again sold over to somebody else now when Yahoo is sold over itself. So those days, Flickr is a photographer's platform. If somebody is on Flickr, they have to be a photographer. But Facebook or Instagram or all these places, anybody can be on these platforms. But if somebody is on Flickr, they were considered, okay, they are serious photographers and things like that. So those days, getting 1,000 views on Flickr was a very interesting thing. In fact, I created this post in 2006 when I got the first 1,000 views in Flickr. So Flickr is where I learned a lot of photography, because I never studied photography personally. I never went into a school which taught photography. So though I have the advertising background, I came from the marketing background, photography happened on the go, right? So these are a set of images that shot during the BWS days. BWS is Bangalore Weekend Shoots, which is a community we created, and we go about shooting every weekend. So like Srikumar was mentioning during the his introduction, he said, so I've done like photo walks. So we've done like some 350 photo walks only with BWS. So every weekend, every Saturday, Sunday, we go about shooting, nook and corner of the city. Not just Bangalore, we also go out on tours. We go to, from Kanyakumari to, Varanasi to Gokarnas to Kolkata, right? We kept on traveling as a group. So my learnings happened as a group, right? So we all go to the same place. We end up shooting the same place, but our images will be different. So that gave me a lot of, learnings very quickly happened. And thanks to all my BWS friends who are always supporting, in terms of cross learning, right? So this is in like 2005. A lot of things happened. And then I was just showing, this is the kind of groups that we go on. We go to Hosur, we go to Gokarna, we have celebrations, we have birthday parties, we have exhibitions on the go, mobile exhibitions, right? So we had like some fun those days, right? The BWS days. So in 2007, I went ahead to buy one DSLR camera. My first DSLR camera was D80 Nikon. I was always with Nikon from the time I got into the DSLR world. So 2007, the first picture that I shot also was in a Cubbon Park. We just take the camera, go about shooting pictures. So since then, I was like started shooting a lot more images seriously. Because I was in advertising, and some of the clients sometimes ask for, okay, can you do some pictures? Because they must be seeing some images on my Flickr, and then ask some customers, some of the customers will be asking, okay, can you do something? Can you do something else? Those days, the full frame, affording a full frame camera was so expensive. So this crop sensor camera itself is so much to kind of shoot in 2007, 2008 times. So this just to show, okay, the first picture with the first thing. In July 2007, I just wanted to just bring in some notice, right? Because I don't know what is this serious journalism. I don't have a journalism background. Again, I come from the advertising background, but just to understand what these photojournalists do. So there is suddenly one fire happened in MG Road in the UB's, the public PU building itself, the public utility building on the MG Road. So first time I ever shot something which is newsworthy, something which is relevant to photojournalism, something which is serious subject matter. So all these times you go and shoot birds, butterflies, tomatoes, babies, sunsets. So any photographer, when they're starting, they always say, if you're shooting this, you're just starting, right? So first time ever, I just like went and shot something like this. And I have friends and all, they will kind of appreciate it. Okay, this is good, this is good. So you're learning something, you're moving on to the next step. So on the go. So I happened to meet another photographer by name Selva Prakash, who is also my mentor. He is a photojournalist, and then he's a freelance photographer. Today he's an independent photographer working for even India and international magazines and news agencies. So I met him in 2007, but first time I went with him for a shoot, right? So it was a dump yard. It was a dump yard in the Hennur Road in Bangalore. It is hardly, it's actually those days, 2008, it was still within the city. It was still outside the city, but today it is very much the city. And then beyond that, the whole city, the new airport road came in, the parallel road was opened up on the Hennur Road and all that. So this dump yard is closed and all our Bangalore dump, we're talking about 4,000 tons of dump today. Today's data, they're talking about 4,000 tons every single day. They take out from the city and then dump it elsewhere, which is 100 kilometers away from Bangalore city. Those days they used to have some of these dump yards. One of them is in Hennur, was in Hennur. So we went to this dump yard just to see how people are doing, what they are doing, the kind of survival they go through. So these men and women, children, everybody will be like fighting with dogs there, and then kind of collect their source of materials from these waste. What these guys do is they just go burn all the dump. Some vehicle will come and dump their material there. Maybe next 2 days they will dry it up, and third day, fourth day they will burn it up. Once they burn it, they have something in hand. You can see that thing in hand. This lady is holding something like a stick and a magnet in the front. So they kind of roll this magnet on the waste and then collect these iron pieces, right? And then with these iron pieces, they go and sell. Hardly they'll get 100 rupees, 80 rupees, 100 rupees, 150 rupees in a day. That's the kind of earnings these guys used to make. These guys know the kind of problems they go through. You can see children there. I mean, when we were talking to this girl, she was just mentioning, I'm trying to help my mom whenever she has some problem, because when there is a holiday, I'll be able to come and help. I kind of do this, kind of support. That extra help will earn them 10 rupees, 15 rupees extra. So it's a very sad situation. They know the kind of problems they go through. You can see the pictures and then understand the kind of smoke and the effect that comes out of this space, right? So you can see these guys will sit there. They'll use this, in the same hand only. Though they have gloves and all that, the moment you see this other madam who's sitting here, they use this betel nut and the betel leaves and all this. They just keep doing. They'll eat there only. They collect all these waste and then go and give it off in the shop. This is one problem even today. This is still not sorted out, though the dump moved from the city 200 kilometers away, right? So you can see the kind of ambience which is created in this in this dump yard. So many dogs around. So we were scared to go, but these people are saying no, nothing to worry. You'll be able to go around, move around. Those dogs will not do anything and all that. But we were still scared, and these guys will be all the time fighting among themselves. And then even the men and women, children, they have to go fight with these guys to collect this waste from these dump yards. You can see the situation. There are birds, there are animals, there are people, there are houses. today, if you go to this place, this is 2008, right? So almost 12 years back. Today, if you go to this place, you can see lot of houses around this space. Lot more construction happened, and this dump yard is closed, but this kind of a valley space still remains, and there are some construction also coming up in this. So I wanted to just say, okay, this dump problem is still not sorted out, and even after the dump material which is going away by 100 kilometers, this problem still exists in this city, right? So this is the kind of situation that these men and women go through. They know they have these health issues, but they'll always say, even if I have to go take a bus from their village, which is like some 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers from MG Road, they say the bus costs 20 rupees. If I have to go and come back, 40 rupees gone. So rather I can sit here and then make this 150 rupees is what they say, right? So this is one thing that I wanted to say. And then specific to the transportation part of it, right? Cutting off a tree, and then this fashion, this was CMH Road. I was just saying, just kind of a juxtaposition of fashion and this cutting tree. Since 2006, when one of our chief ministers, Kumarasamy, he went to Delhi, and then he traveled in Delhi Metro, and he made his mind, okay, we have to have something called as Bangalore Metro, Nama Bengaluru Metro. Nama Metro is what they call it. And they started cutting trees left, right, and center. This again still persists. This still exists. Even today, they're cutting trees. Today's newspaper says they're going to cut 165 trees on the line number 5, including the trees in Army campus, in All Saints Church, in Pottery Road, and things like that. So this is the first kind of the first phase between Bayapanahalli and MG Road. So since then, I started documenting the changes that happened because of the metro, right? So I just put this as the first image because it becomes a fashion statement to having a metro, but we lost so much just to have this Bangalore Metro. So I can show these 3 images. This is next to this Lido theater, the Lido Mall, huge trees, huge buildings. The MG Road used to have the boulevard, which is a beautiful space. The walkway that we used to have is lost. And you can see the whole dump. This is the original MG Road. You can see far away in the right side corner picture. Far away in the far right, you can see the the PU building. All these are in Indiranagar and the MG Road axis, right? You can see road, the CMH Road. All these guys for almost 2-3 years, they used to put the cattle on the road itself. Completely road is blocked. You can see the house behind those cattle. You can see the houses like raised because of the metro construction. And this is on the MG Road, this Arvind building, right? So the changes I keep documenting even today, the Jaydeva flyover, be it the Potter Town or Shivajinagar changes. So I started shooting from 2006. I keep shooting whenever I go that side, consciously taking the camera when I go that side and then start shooting images. These are some of the images during the construction. People are working, people are sleeping in the same yard, the material that they use for making these bridges, the railway bridges on top, right? You can see the raised houses on this side also. This again, it's more of a hope. I want to just include this picture saying people had a hope that this metro will change the way we travel and things like that. But with the amount of money they spend on every kilometer, thousands of crores are being invested on this project. They would have spent just 100 crores on a local train like what we have in Madras or Bombay, right? Those kind of places have this metro, the suburban trains. So Bangalore would have even activists and specialists, some of these people who are transport specialists. They even today they say Bangalore is unnecessarily wasting money on Bangalore Metro. I know it is a AC train. I know it is comfortable on certain tracks, but they would have spent far less money on a normal transportation, normal suburban train, because Bangalore also has so many railway tracks. There are multiple tracks coming in from all these sides, from Hosur side, from Mysore side, from north Tumkur side also there are trains coming in. So you can just interlink these stations and they would have been able to create something interesting. But because of this, the kind of losses we had is far more, is what the activists keep saying. In this picture, you see the center one, which is a Plaza Theatre, one of the beautiful theaters, very interesting old theater. Used to have this wooden flooring, wooden balcony, very nice balcony. A very interesting movie. Just the last movie I remember seeing in this theater also before they demolished and constructed the MG Road Metro in the same space. The Plaza Theatre we lost, and we have MG Road Metro, Mahatma Gandhi Road Metro station is sitting on this place. So this this again, like, you know, I hashtagged it as Metro Breaks, because these guys go about breaking every single thing, right? So it just happened while I was like traveling in a double-decker bus. I just saw some places where, for example, if you see this bottom, the third picture, the second column, third picture, second row, third picture. So this I saw first when I was coming in a double-decker bus, the sleeper bus. I just saw, what is this, something. Then I understood it is demolished because of a metro construction, some house, and then there is they used to have some staircase, right? So I called it as stairs to nowhere. All these constructions, all these demolitions happened because of some kind of extension on the road or metro. So I went about shooting, you know, almost for some 4 or 5 months. I just keep on going on the metro track, the line where the metro goes, and started shooting so many more. I just like put, you know, 8 images in this just to show how metro breaks, and then what are the things that are happening, the changes happening in the architecture space itself, just to show how it changes. So sometimes when you do something like this, it also goes into the press saying, you know, when there is a change happening, they also wanted to kind of publish this as a article, and you know. So that's one thing. So sometimes when you're doing something right, people also will notice, okay, so you're doing something. And I keep documenting what is happening, what are the changes happening in the city, just to, you know, share it with people. So this is the metro thing. And then today, so in 2000, I think 8 or 10 is when the Jayadeva flyover was built. Right, for almost 10 years, this flyover was existing. That's the running people are using on the Bannerghatta Road. That's a savior for the Bannerghatta Road, because a lot of traffic being controlled, you know, managed well by this Jayadeva flyover. But now again, Metro breaks it, because they want to have a separate one more extra line, which is like not all planned well by them. Because of their ill planning, we are losing something which is spent maybe like in 2006-7 when they built this flyover, 12 or something. When they built this flyover, it costed some 14 crores or something, right? Now that money is lost, and I don't know who's going to spend this money, who's going to, you know, invest on this to recreate this project. When, if you compare 40,000, 50,000 crores of money being spent on this metro, this 10 crore, 12, 13 crore is so less. But it is also our money. At the end of it, it is taxpayers' money. And we end up losing that money, reusing waste of money which is going in there to reconstruct these flyovers. So even today, like I said, today's newspaper also mentioned about cutting of trees and breaking of this, you know, infrastructure which is already there, is happening because of the metro construction. Right, and third is the water story. I mentioned 3 things. One is the dump, and second one is the transport, and third one is this water story. I've been doing, you know, because I come from an agriculture background, I'm more interested in this heritage and water stories. Whatever I did in Bangalore connected to these 2 things. It could be heritage or water related. So Bangalore Lake Diaries is what I call it. I went about shooting a lot of these lakes. At some point of time, we used to have, you know, thousands of lakes is what they say. But today we have hardly 200 lakes. Even out of 200 lakes, we have hardly 30-40 lakes which are reasonably maintained, well rejuvenated, which has some kind of a life around it. Otherwise, all these lakes are gone for a toss, and you can understand the kind of problems that we face. We used to have Rajakalways. It is a completely, you know, man-made valley system. Bangalore is lying on a, you know, 900 meters above the sea level, 940 meters above the sea level. So all these systems are man-made systems. When there is one lake overflows, the water goes to another lake, from there it goes to another lake, from there it goes to another lake. So likewise, we had like different valley systems, the Northern Valley, then the South Valley, right? The Ramapura Valley is one valley in the north side. Then we have this Madiwala Lake Valley is another valley. From Madiwala, it goes to Belandur. From there it goes to Vartur, and then kind of water flows from one lake to the other lake. But because of the rampant construction and ill planning of the city, quick planning, the last so many 20 years, 30 years, we lost a lot of these lakes, one, and a lot of sewage also goes into this lake. So when we made this film called Bangalore Lake Diaries in 2014, one of the lake champions said, people say sewage comes in, sewage comes in, sewage comes in, people are letting sewage inside, all that, but whose sewage it is? At the end of it, it's our sewage. I'm also responsible for letting this sewage into these lakes, right? So I started shooting these lakes of Bangalore since 2009. So right side, the left side photo, if you see, this guy is collecting these greens, and they take these greens and feed it to the cattle. One thing, all these lakes are, fed with chemicals, lot of sewage coming in, and these chemicals goes into the milk. Obviously, they feed this cattle, and then that milk only comes to us. So it's a big cycle that we are getting into a bigger problem. This is just from the cattle side. On the right side, what you see is again a farmer who is taking directly this lake water and putting it onto his agriculture fields. He's just feeding his agriculture land using this water straight from the lake, completely sewage water, and that goes into making this carrots and radish and cabbage and cauliflowers. This is just in Vartur, right? Hardly 10 kilometers from Indiranagar, 20 kilometers from Bangalore city. These farmlands still exist. Luckily, we still have these agricultural lands, but it's very unfortunate that we have to feed on these agriculture's grown, the vegetables grown from these lake water, all right? So these two pictures, there's one from Whitefield Lake. The left side one is from Halsur Lake. The Halsur Lake, these kids know the kind of problems they go through because of fishing in this. You can see it yourself. You can see the kind of dump which is there in this. They still fish and then go and eat at home. And they also get a lot of this, the skin related issues because they're playing in this. You can't even touch this water. You and I will never touch this water, right? But these kids play there. They kind of go, and then men and women come. The right side picture, the one which is in Whitefield, men and women come there. They wash, they take bath, they wash the cattle and all of that in this lake. You can see the small slab, metal slab that they kept for. Oops, sorry, I kind of did this full screen off. Okay, so and there are some positive stories. I won't say all negative. The right side picture that you see is from Putanahalli Lake, which is a small lake. It's hardly 30 acres. When you compare to the biggest lake in Bangalore is Belandur, which is 950 acres. When you compare to Belandur Lake, this lake is too small, too small, right? It's only 30 acres. This lake lies between the Brigade Millennia and the L&T South City, right? A small lake lies between these two properties. And there are lake champions. There's one, Mrs. Usha Rajagopalan, who started this Putanahalli Lake Trust. And she got the permission from the government, from BBMP, from VDA, from the Forest Department, the whole world, and got the permission to maintain this lake. They were able to clean this lake first using volunteers, and then bring in specialists who can set up something like, the island in the middle you can see. And then the kind of trees they planted, the kind of, birds which started coming back, the fish started coming back, the insects started coming back. So it's a thriving ecosystem they created just by rejuvenating this lake from a cesspool, and it went on to become a beautiful lake. Even today, if you go, this lake has water, and you can see a lot of butterflies, you can see 50 different birds, and for so many vegetation, a lot of vegetation which is there. They do have issues, from the neighboring, people. Sometimes they, have fights also with the slums. Actually, they're throwing off some of the waste into this. They, in spite of having their barricades, they still throw some waste dump into the lake. But in spite of all this, this is a positive story. On the left side one that you see is again Alsur Lake. This part of Alsur Lake is being maintained by the military. They have a rowing club. It's called the Trishna Rowing Club. This rowing club, they keep cleaning up. They keep, cleaning the space nicely. Because the military side is so clean, and the other side of the lake is completely, even today, you'll see a lot of vegetation in the lake growing, and then this water hyacinth is floating on this lake bodies. So the lakes are very important because Bangalore, of course, when there is a borewell, if somebody has a borewell, it will be thousands of meters, right? 1 kilometer down you have to go to get water. Of course, it's on the the hilly zone, 900 meters above the sea level. So the water is, yeah, it's not a perennial problem, I would say, but in spite of we getting water from Kaveri, and now the government is trying to get from even from Western Ghats, almost 300 kilometers on the western coast, they want to divert some water from that side to Bangalore, which is a problem statement. But these lakes are the only saviors which can help the city save on its own, right? Tomorrow, every time when there is a Kaveri problem and the city is burning and we get to this, if we have maintained these 230, 240 lakes in a good position, good situation, we don't have to worry about the water in the city. So the world famous lake, I just want to talk about this world famous lake, which I've been shooting from 2009. You all know there's a Bellandur Lake, which played a very important role during the World War II. In 1945, they used to have some, the floaters, some kind of a ship kind of a thing on this. And they used to have some flights coming in and landing and all, it seems, on this lake. So Bellandur Lake is, like I said earlier, it's 950 acres. It's the biggest lake in the city. And this lake has this foam everywhere. And then you must have seen images, a lot of images, in the TV, and cyclists and car guys and all get this foam onto their faces. I couldn't shoot those images on that particular day, but I've been shooting Bellandur Lake for a really long time. So this used to be the beauty of this lake earlier. At some point of time, when I started shooting this in 2008, 2009, people go there and stand in front of this, like a Kaveri, Ganga. People go there and then, pray God. They used to take the cattle and wash their cattle and all that. It used to be that kind 10, 12 years back. And of course, I've shown this Vartur Lake also earlier, where, people collect this greens from the, using these coracles. They go on this and then keep cutting and then bring it for their cattle. So it was much better 10 years, 12 years back, but that time also it is not great, right? I won't say it is a great situation, but 10 years, 12 years back, it was much better compared to what is today, right? I'm showing more images. You can see the kind of drastic construction happened. People are putting up Kew Gardens in Bangalore. Of course, we have amazing Lalbagh Garden, which is much better than Kew Gardens in the UK. But Prestige wanted to save their property as Kew Gardens and advertise on the Bellandur Lake, the grids there. So this is just opposite to the Bellandur Lake. It is the water catchment, I would say, the water flowing. That's the lands which is not part of the lake, but they built huge high rises. Everywhere you can see high rises around the lake. And all this sewage also will come into this lake itself. You can see the Sobha properties just behind the lake. And this is the kind of foam that started coming into Bellandur Lake. And this Bellandur Lake foam goes next to the Vartur Lake. And from there it goes to the other thing. And from there it goes to the other valley system. And finally it goes to Hosur and then Krishnagiri, and then it goes and joins the Pennar, and then it becomes, the sewage throughout, right? The thing that goes from Bangalore, though we can call it as water, but it's just the sewage which is going into when it reaches the sea, right? So this is what happened in 2018 January. It started fire in the lake, and some part of things started like burning, and military was admitted, and then people were coming, and there were a lot of 500 people, more than 500 people involved in stopping this fire, and it went on for 2 days. Right? All that happened in Bellandur. So the whole world knows that time fire in the Bellandur Lake. So somebody said it feels like the Hiroshima autobomb blast or something like that in Twitter when they saw these images. Right. So when we was shooting this, we were asked to shoot a film called Bangalore Lake Diaries. That is available if you Google on YouTube, or you will find this Bangalore Lake Diaries film, like a 6-minute film. It's a short, small film where we're just showcasing the positive things of what is happening, who are these lake champions who are working on this lake rejuvenation and all that. We've interviewed a lot of them, including the government, including the Lake Development Authority heads, including activists, including scientists, right? Some of them and all that. It's interesting. And then UNESCO wanted to publish this story of Bangalore Lake Dairies, and then it went on to get published in one of these UNESCO's magazines called the Blue Dot. You can see Bangalore was once a city of 1,000 lakes, and today we kind of have. This is an interesting thing. You can see the top right side, a small picture of the god Ayanar or Manjunatha that we call the Karadevaru. They call the lake god, Karadevaru. So that is there in every lake. And then this picture, the bottom picture, I was talking about the agriculture fields in Vartur Lake. That's the second largest lake in the city. You can see, right? Some of these pictures. Sometimes the BDA, the Bangalore Development Authority, goes on with some kind of demolition drive. They goes about demolishing houses, but they always leave these churches or mosques or temples. All these places of worship will always be left. And if there is some government involved, they will not do anything. If there's some VIP involved, they will not do anything. Only the poor people houses will be demolished. And then they just want to show, okay, so we also done some kind of demolition drive, things like that. But yeah, at least, so they will recover some kind of land for the lake, which is a good thing which is happening in the city of Bangalore, which is very important to conserve these lakes and rejuvenate these lakes for the future, to survive. So this is the kind of positive note we want to leave it for, the lake champions. They wanted to say, okay, there is a thing which is coming up. You can still have something growth, right? To save the city, we need to save its lakes. That's what the story ended. All right. So this is with the lake dairy. What I also did was, from 2018, I started using a drone camera also to shoot these lakes. I'll show hardly maybe 5, 6 pictures, 8 pictures or something I'll show. So this is one, this is called the not the KR-Puram, the C.V. Ramanagar Lake, right? It's one part of it, you can see the water hyacinth in the lake. The other side, you have completely green grass where, even cattle go and they feed on. This is the Vartur Lake. It's very close to Whitefield. You can see the lake bund has become a road, and then it's cutting through the lake itself. And then the exit of the lake, the Madagu they call it, the Kodi they call it. The Kodi will pass through, the bridge will be on top of the Kodi and the water goes out to this. And then every lake in Bangalore has this kind of green patch, because most of these lakes brings in this, the nutrients from the sewage that we kind of pass it on. So these greens come on top of these lakes. This is from Vartur Lake. This is an interesting picture. I was in fact waiting for the train. I went like 3-4 times, but I couldn't shoot a train on this track with the picture. This is very close to KR-Puram flyover. This is called Billenahalli Kere anta heltare. This is called this is very close to KR-Puram flyover, the tin factory that side, the Tumkur Road and the KR-Puram flyover. Yeah. This is the Begur Lake. Right now, the Begur Lake, they clearly removed all the water. There's some development which is happening. They, in fact, wanted to even build a huge Shiva statue in the middle of the lake and all that. And there were a lot of protests happening. And hopefully that Shiva statue is not coming up there. They have a beautiful temple which is 1,200 years old next to this lake. They can just renovate the temple and beautify the temple, and then they can set up some gardens around it, and then they can make it as a beautiful, tourist spot instead of setting up a huge Shiva statue in the middle of the lake. This lake, when I shot in 2018, 2019, they had full water, and this fisherman was fishing in the middle of it, and I could get this picture of the Begur Lake. This is also a Begur Lake. I would say there's an irony that I wanted to show. One side of it, you can see the water and trees. Other side, you can see the waste wood, right? All these collected waste wood, which is used in the construction and the centering, they call it, right? For that wood kind of thing. They sell this. They also, give it off on rental for people to use it. And sometimes they sell it as the wood waste for firing and all that. So the contrast, I just wanted to show. This is a place called Akshay Nagar. You can see the high-rise buildings and the lake. The lake still remains It is beautiful. It's a very nice lake. It's a small lake again, like the Putanahalli lake, but you can see the Hiranandanis, the L&Ts, the Mantris, and everybody you can see in this building. The far away you can see this is the Meenakshi Mall, Banagata Road Meenakshi Mall side, which is you know a huge high-rise building. There are a lot more high-rise building came up in this, and the DLF, Newtown, Hiranandanis, Mantris, and everybody is in this space. Then they'll start sucking water, and then these lakes needs to be saved if the city has to be saved. This is K.R.Puram Lake. Just after K.R.Puram flyover, if you go this lake, and it's again a very nice lake. But all these lakes have this issue of maintenance and the sewage entry, which is the problem statement. This is Bhadrahalli Lake, which is very close to again after K.R.Puram. You can see there is a institute, the college here, the Green City College University, and then they become university, and then a lot of campus coming up. So these lakes gets into the dry side. Even behind this lake, where the opposite side of the lake also has more high-rise buildings. So everywhere they want to market it as lake view apartments, and then lakefront apartment and all of this. But where do they get water when they go up 20 floors, 30 floors, high-rise buildings, if they don't save this lake? Just as they using this marketing, as a marketing material. But these guys should not let their sewage in. These guys should not, should spend money to maintain this space. Obviously, BDA takes care of this. Again, government bodies also, there are a lot more problem. BDA is one of the departments, Bangalore Development Authority. Then BBMP is there. Then there is a Bangalore Lake Authority. There is one more thing. And then there are some lakes which are under forest control, right? So we have this issue of seamless working between these organizations, and also these lake champions, the activists who are fighting to conserve their own lakes and their visibility. So this is the other story that I thought I'll show. So being a Tamilian in this city, I always had this fascination, of doing something in the city when it comes to this. So 2009 being the last war in Sri Lanka, we had this Sri Lankan war happening in May. I was running a marathon in May, Tata, I think TCS marathon or something. It's a 10K marathon I was running. I was wearing a t-shirt and a sticker was stuck, free Tamil and not Tamil free. So I was just running around. At that time we had this aspiration to do something for the Tamils who are fighting, and then who got into this big trouble of being in the war, and the number of deaths and all that. So that inspired me to go to look for a place. This picture, if you see, this is a Google map. This was taken in May 2016, right? So I went to this place. It's called the Indira Gandhi International Academy. This school was in fact inaugurated by Rajiv Gandhi himself, but the school is named as Indira Gandhi International Academy. In 1990, this school was inaugurated in Bangalore, just 1 year before his assassination. This school, the irony is again, this school hosted the kids who are the refugees from Sri Lankan Tamil fraternity. So those refugees, they stayed in various places. They could be in camps in Orissa, in Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, wherever, right? All those camps. But those kids were sent to this school because at least they wanted to give good education to these kids, right? So in 2016 May, the school building still remained, because I can't show a drone shot. When I wanted to shoot, I couldn't shoot, and this building is no more. And in the month of October 2016, this building is gone, and the right side picture, bottom right side picture that you see is today's situation, when the whole building, the whole campus is with a lot of trees around and all that. So we lost this building. As a photographer, I feel it's important to document whatever is happening, right? With a lot of changes happening in cities like Bangalore, Madras, Kolkata. Metro cities are, they're conflicting zones. They are changing zones. Every single day there'll be something or the other keep changing. So I had the opportunity to go into the school, to talk to these kids, to kind of document, to shoot the ambience in the school. So I went in first time in 2009. Just after this war, I get to know about, okay, there is a school exists like this in Bangalore. Though I was living in Bangalore from 2004, I get to know about it only in 2009. So I went in first time. This is the school first time when we shot. It's called Indira Gandhi International Academy. I was told this was in Jakkur in the north Bangalore. I was told this used to be a military space at some point of time, and then they gave this building. I still don't understand why they demolished the building. And then when I went recently in 2019, when I went, I was not even allowed inside the campus, and some security was saying this belongs to a private owner or something. So we couldn't get more information on this. So this Indira Gandhi International Academy hosted over 200 kids, 250 kids who are the refugee children from Sri Lanka. So this is the first access that I got, and then we were shooting this picture. The school, it's a very beautiful school. The kind of ambience it created. The kids are so nice, march on with hope and wisdom. Look at the kind of tagline they had for the school. It's a very interesting school, boys and girls, both sides. It's a co-education school. Very impressed with their sincerity in terms of these kids. In spite of they being in Bangalore, in spite of they being Sri Lankan Tamils, they were learning Kannada also as a medium of language in the school. It's very interesting to see the kids, because they had Tamil teachers. They also had Kannada teachers. They had math, science, all those which is required for Kannada medium, for the Karnataka school board. They had all this. And then there are so many kids who passed from this school, because it started in 1990. And there are so many kids who passed out of this school, went on to study college, and then they still, after finishing their college, they start teaching here in the school itself. It was a very nice thing that these school kids who went on to become professors and lecturers and teachers in their own self. So this is the top angle of this picture, that the wide that I could get, and then I could pull out from the archives. So it's a very interesting, beautiful campus. It has very nice school, and also the hostels for separate hostels for boys, separate hostels for girls. And there is an office room which is separately built, and all this is like gone now. So you can see the happy faces, the energy in these kids. I'm sure all these kids, because I shot this in 2009, 2010, 2011. For 3 years, 4 years, I shot. Every time when I go, I keep shooting. All these kids must have, even passed out of their colleges now, after almost 10 years now, right? You can see the kind of happy, smiling kids. They know their background. They know where they come from. They know what kind of problems they went through. But still, they were very positive, very energetic kids. Right. So as a mechanism, just to raise some funds for the school, because they wanted to have a borewell, they wanted to have a vegetable garden. In fact, my wife from their office, there like some 20 people went as a part of the CSR activity. They set up a vegetable garden for them in 2011, 12 and all that. They used to grow their own vegetables at some point of time. So I did this as a fundraising activity for them. I shot these kids and then put in a calendar. We made a reasonable amount of money that they could sustain for their needs in 2009. I'm just going to show some of these pictures. If you see this girl Priyanka says, I want to become somebody. It's their aspirations, right? Kasturi and Darsha, all these like kids. We shot these pictures, and I want to kind of see if I can meet these kids again. I mean, all these 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old could be 18-year-old, 20-year-old now. So I hope I meet these kids someday, just to understand what they're doing. Did they reach their ambition? Were they able to kind of get into, for example, if you see this Raghuvaran, he said, I want to become an engineer, right? Somebody was saying, I will become a traveler, I'll become something, right? So somebody was a teacher, somebody was something. So I just wanted to meet these kids, because this 2016, the school was closed. And even the building, the mud is like gone out of the space. Even the bricks they're taken out from there, and nothing remains as of now, right? So this is another important documentation I feel, which we had and we don't have it anymore, which is very cosmopolitan, right? Bangalore always remained as a cosmopolitan city thousands of years back, not just today, not just in 1990s and 2000s. It was always a cosmopolitan city, and it had, and maybe the next section I would show the representations how Bangalore is cosmopolitan, more cosmopolitan thousands of years back, right? I'll show that. But this is important to understand how cosmopolitan this Bangalore was. A Sri Lankan Tamil refugee kid coming from Sri Lanka to Madras, and then from there to Bangalore, and they study Kannada here. They went on to become a teacher here, and the teachers, right, when they, the last that I had a conversation with one of the teachers, after the school is demolished, she also got married, and then she moved to Europe. She settled in Europe as a refugee, and then the rehabilitation that they had. So this is again, now you can see the kind of, so this is this girl, she wrote Amuda. Her name is her name is something else, Amuda Mary or something. She wrote Amuda in Kannada. That's what she was mentioning. I still can't read Kannada. I know this, the first letter is A, but I don't know about this. But I can speak Kannada. That was I learned. But these kids are very positive in learning another language, and so the hope remained with them. So I still feel this picture, this one picture will be my picture for myself for whatever number of years to come. That I saw this, I saw this building, I saw this, the existence, the very existence of this building, and the hopes of hundreds and thousands of kids who passed out of the school. Right, this is my picture for myself. Right. So the next topic that I want to talk about is the heritage, because when we talk about heritage, Bangalore, though it is not a presidency town, presidency city, unlike Madras or Bombay or Kolkata, the city was still a capital, was a military base since 1800s, 1801 or something. After Tipu was killed in 1799, Britishers started moving their capital from Srirangapatna to Bangalore, and they started building whatever they wanted. They set up a new cantonment. The city existed as a part of Mysore Kingdom, and then the cantonment was part of Madras Presidency. That's again one of the reasons you see a lot of Tamils, Telugus in the eastern Bangalore and the the side of Bangalore which is close to Madras, which is on the old Madras Road and Alsur and KR Puram and the Indiranagar side and things like that. So at some point of time, even Vinnamangala, today's Indiranagar, was called as Vinnamangalam. That's what they say. The connection is again from the Britishers started setting up their thing. So even before Britishers coming in, we had a lot more heritage connected to the city. So I must say I'm thankful to this NGO called INTAC, and specifically to mention Meera Iyer, Arvind Chandramohan, Pankaj Modi. These people, since 2009, since the time I started doing a lot of photography in the city, we kind of had an opportunity to work together, to collaborate and things like that. So one day I read about this particular thing called Palace to Palace. There is a Tipu Palace in Bangalore, and we know there's a Bangalore Palace, which is hardly 5-6 kilometers away, which passes through the little KR Road and then Avenue Road and then the Palace Road itself. Right? There are hardly 3 roads which separate the Tipu Palace and the Bangalore Palace. I think Naresh Narasimhan, who's an architect who's based in Bangalore, he mentioned this in a newspaper article which says there are a lot of greens in this stretch. Right? He kind of came to a point which said, because of these heritage buildings, because of these government buildings, because of these lot more things in this stretch, he kind of felt there are a lot more green. Right? So after reading this, I went about the next day morning itself. I started my documentation. I thought, okay, let me just go and shoot what is there in this stretch. When I read the article, said that there are so many heritage buildings in this. Right, in this 5-kilometer stretch, we could find over 65 heritage buildings. Right, there are a lot of private properties, there are government properties, and a lot more things. So you can see this. The first picture that I'm showing here is the Tipu Palace. Lot of Burma teak, and it's an amazing, beautiful, fort, a small fort. I mean, obviously it used to be a big fort with a lot of huge garden and things like that. A lot of these lands were taken by, after Tipu was killed, and then a lot of lands were taken by the Maharaja to build a school in one place, a garden was set up, a medical college was set up. A lot of things happened as a part of the construction and the development that happened, but the fort remained like this. And inside the fort campus, you can see this Ganesha statue also. I don't know when this was placed, who placed it, but it is there. And at least when you go now, today, you can still feel happy that there is a Ganesha statue inside Tipu Palace. It's a very interesting thing, I felt. So this is Adyar Avenue, the Theosophical Society, which is very close to Tipu Palace, hardly half a kilometer from Tipu Palace. Because when I shot the Palace to Palace series of images, I felt it's important just to shoot around the vicinity also. So the Adyar Avenue, I would say, apart from the Theosophical Society in Chennai, which is in Adyar, this would be the only Adyar which is outside Chennai, which will have an Adyar Avenue. That's also in Bangalore. I feel very happy about Theosophical Society office in Bangalore having this Adyar Avenue. The Mahila Seva Samaja, which is again a very important institution, a school, and this is the old building, and the right side one you see, which is the latest building, which is developed in the recent days. And then you can see the Fort High School. This is an interesting, important building, which is again 1907, which was 1909. No, 1907. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember this exactly. So some of these, you can see these alumni, some of these, men who are playing there. When I was talking to them, they said they're the alumni of this school, and then they keep coming and playing. This school was almost, a very dilapidated condition. And 2 years back, in fact, Intac found a donor who could fund 2 crores to renovate this building into its original, the majestic look. In the next couple of months, this building will be completely ready. I'm already working on a film also on this renovation. I've been shooting since 2018. They started this project of renovation. So I go and shoot when their work is happening, when there are changes happening, when they're painting, when they're doing this. We in fact used some pictures also, footages also, videos also, interviews also, all those things. So this is a very interesting school which is getting renovated. That is very important. That too, one man could fund 2 crores. That's a very interesting thing to note. So this is Vani Vilas Institute. Again, there's a school. And then the right side one is a Minto Eye Hospital. You can see the photo of Minto himself inside this hospital. And this is Victoria Hospital. Recently, somebody was mentioning that they will demolish. The government wanted to demolish this building. Some of the buildings in this campus are already demolished, but this building is a important building. The main hospital campus. You can see the high rises, the high ceilings, and you can see Victoria statue on the top and Gandhi's photo in the bottom segment, and then the first floor you can see Victoria's photo. This is called the Victoria Hospital itself. It's again 1900. This is built almost 120 years back. So the Bangalore Fort, again, this is 500 plus years old. It used to be a mud fort at some point of time. Then it went on to become a stone fort, and then it was a huge fort. But now we have only a small segment of the fort. After British captured Bangalore, after Tipu was killed, again, at some point of time, they've taken the stones from these buildings, from this fort, and they used it for building all these campuses around the medical college, the Victoria Hospital, the Minto Eye Hospital. All this happened in the 1900s. They've taken the stones from the walls of the bigger fort. And what we have now next to Care Market is a very small portion of the fort. It used to be a nice big egg-shaped fort, and what we see is only a small segment, one small line in the fort. The city market, you can see the city market from the other side of the market, and then there's another heritage building. It's also gone now, and they built some new building there. This is an interesting building called the Mohan Buildings. It's again 100 plus years old. They used to have a Bombay Anand Bhavan hotel in this. So I started shooting almost for 25 days. Every day I go for 2-3 hours, just walk. I can't go in a motorcycle. I can't go in this road is not accessible on, a normal two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. I just park somewhere and then walk for kilometers, just go around inside lanes and found some interesting images. This again, a hostel, a community hostel for the kids belong to certain community. They'll come there and then stay here and then, do their college, school, everything. This is on the Avenue Road again. This is the Palace Road entrance, Avenue Road Junction. This the State Bank of Mysore. We used to call it the State Bank of Mysore Bank Junction, but now it became State Bank of India, and then all conglomerates happened. So this left side building is a heritage building there, which used to be called as the Mad House. They used to have a mental hospital in this campus at some point of time before the construction of Nimmans happened. Right, once the Nimmans was built, they moved out of this place, and then this went on to become State Bank of Mysore. They still have a beautiful name board inside Bank of Mysore and things like that inside. If you go into, it's a beautiful heritage building. Then this again, the Central College Old Boys. The Central College, which again was in news recently, they want to demolish and things like that. So you can see this is the Central College Tower, the clock tower, and some of these beautiful, the facade that you can see. In fact, I went up to this building to climb up through some lab and then some ladder and somewhere. I was lucky that I could access this place, passing through a shitty lab, which has like a lot of pigeons inside, and it's scary to even climb up to this building. But I thought, okay, let's get a different angle of this Central College Tower. Like we always see this Big Ben, in a straight angle, a beautiful angle. So I kind of thought I'll get this, and then got this picture. So this is the Freedom Park. Today it's called Freedom Park. It used to be called as the Bangalore Central Jail. And when the Central Jail, the space was not sufficient, they wanted to move the jail to Parapanagrahara, which is almost 20 kilometers from the city, which is close to Electronic City. Recently, when Jayalalitha and Sasikala, they were all jailed there. But that is far away. But this particular jail is also has some importance. L.K. Advani was jailed in this place during emergency and all that in 70s when Indira Gandhi started the emergency. So that was that. Luckily, or we should be saying, it's very fortunate that the government didn't want to demolish some portions of it, and then they wanted to develop this as a park. It's called the Freedom Park, and they still have some, even the jail compartments that people can see, and this watchtower still exists. Though we can't go up, we can still see, at least there is a watchtower like this, and then some portions of the jail remains. Even this alley that you see in the picture remains as is. This is the original jail. They had some 7 different things, and then people could see from the watchtower all directions that way. So this again, this Chief Election Commissioner Office, Nirvachan Nilaya, which is on the same road. This is an interesting building again. This is called the Carlton Towers, the Carlton House, not the Carlton Tower. Carlton Tower unfortunately has a bad name. They had fire in that, but this Carlton House is a CAD office. And I struggled so much to get access to this. Luckily, through a newspaper friend, journalist, I got access to go to this place and shoot this Carlton House. This is Balabrui, which is again a guest house. Which is there on the Palace Road. And the government of Karnataka wanted to demolish this building and to create some recreation club and all, they said. But we were lucky because of public protest and activities, so much of action happened. A lot of protests happened to save this building, and luckily they could save it. This is called the National Gallery of Modern Arts. This used to be called as the Manikyelu Mansion, who was a mining baron who originally came from Arcot or Vellore district. And then they went on to become, the baron businessmen in the city. And then this is a huge property. That used to be his house, and it went on to a government property, and then it was almost dilapidated. And then in early 2000s, this was renovated and made as a gallery, a National Gallery of Modern Arts. It's a beautiful auditorium they have, and permanent galleries they have inside this. It's a beautiful space. You should also check this space. And then, of course, the Bangalore Fort. right? This is an interesting thing to see. The castle, which is copied, they say it's a replica of what we have in UK. So somebody wanted to have this, but of course you look at a different angle to give it a different taste, different sense of this place, right? It's a beautiful palace. Everybody who's coming to Bangalore for the first time must visit this place, right? So this ends with the Palace to Palace. Of course, because Intac, I've been working with Intac, a lot of collaboration happened with them. So we had an opportunity to showcase this as an exhibition, also as an art for public exhibition on the payment of the State Bank of Mysore. We must have had, I don't know how many thousands of people seen this exhibition, because when you put it up in an exhibition in a gallery, there are always a limited set of people coming in, and here you get to see a lot more people who, oh, this is that place, this is that building, this is this building. The kind of conversation happen around this is amazing, right? And then a lot more press covered the photo gallery by the sidewalk, and then even the Palace to Palace went on to become a set of postcards that we built, and then it was given as a memorabilia. It was sold. Even today, people are buying this to write postcards, right? So these are some of the coverages. And then I've had a lot of collaborations with Intac. We shot a lot more pictures on built heritage, specifically on built heritage. So we went, tracing some of these old buildings which were considered heritage in 1985. Intac had a small survey, not a small survey, it's a big survey done in 1985. One Mr. Iyengar who went ahead with the survey, and then he documented 800 plus properties in Bangalore as heritage properties. So Intac in 2015-16, we wanted to 2015 we wanted to go back and track whether those buildings remain or they're demolished. After 30 years, they could trace at least only 40% of the buildings remain. So we went and shot then and now. So we had the old building and what is the new building. For example, if you see this photo on the right side, the glass house eat into the city's heritage. The small portion on the top still remains in this new building also, all right? So some way, some people wanted to have, even this picture, the picture number 5, Vani Vilas Road, a small portion of the old building remained in this, but they built as a glass building. Likewise, we could find a lot more buildings. This is an exhibition which is arranged by Intac. Again, it's art for public. It is done in the Cubbon Park in 2015. So we had a huge response, people coming in and understanding, okay, how it was and how it is. I'm not saying every building was demolished, at least 40% building remained. I want to quote one house in Benson Town. Even the coconut tree still exists. In the old picture, the coconut tree was there, and then the new picture also, the same coconut tree remains in the same kind of a bend tree I could kind of see. So there are a lot of people who are also interested in conserving their own heritage, their own buildings, their own houses. They still keep intact, all right? So you can see some of these newspaper coverages on these stories. I keep shooting a lot of heritage in collaboration with Intac, for Intac. I'm friends with Intac, and that ways, right? So just to give, because if I talk only about the collaborations, that I can talk for many hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. We can talk about collaborations with Intac itself. So in 2014 we had an image exhibition called Alasuru, and then 2017 you can see towns of our city, specifically on the cantonment towns, the Richards Town, the Cook Town, the Fraser Town, all these towns which are built by this one. And then we had an exhibition, and then the Palace to Palace is another collaboration in 14 to 16. And then recently, last year, like Sri Kumar was mentioning when he introduced this Discovering Bengaluru, written by Meera Iyer. It's a very interesting book. If somebody wants to know about Bangalore, if they have to learn on their own. This is a set of stories, 9 different stories. You can take the book and then open the book and then walk with the book. You can, it's like you're walking like a heritage walk. You can do it yourself, kind of a set of images. And I've contributed images to this and worked as a part of the photo management team to curate and things like that. So the kind of collaborations that I had specifically on the built heritage for Intac is amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed every bit of working on these collaborations with Intact. So if somebody wanted to know more about it, the Intact Bangalore is the the space that you can check it in Facebook and all this. Indian National Trust for Art and Culture Heritage. They have over 200 chapters across India, and the Bangalore chapter is one of them. And then I come to this, when I talk about the heritage, we always think, okay, the built heritage means a nice building, beautiful something, right? All the old ones, 200 years, 300 years, or 100 years, 50 years, all these buildings, right? So I was introduced again, and I was always interested in these inscriptions and literature and all this. But thanks to one Mr. Uday Kumar, who's the founder of this group called Inscription Stones of Bangalore, which is rediscovering the inscription stones. We used to have 150 inscription stones in Bangalore, it seems, at some point of time. But in the drastic changes, constructions, development, so many things happening, right? What happened was we lost so many of them. And then when we're retracing those inscription stones, we could find hardly 40, 42 or something. I'll just see there's some kind of a scratch on the screen. I don't know what it is. Okay, there's some line comes on the screen. Okay, so this image that you see on the screen right now is from the Begur Lake. I was telling about this Shiva statue that they're planning to build. So they removed all the water, they pumped out all the water. When they pumped out this water, they found this statue inside, which is they call it as a Gangamma and things like that. So this is a recent discovery. They get to know there is a statue like this existed in the water body inside the lake because of that exercise. So who you see here is Uday Kumar, who has done a stampage of an inscription. So they used to have this paper, wet paper, put on the thing and then apply some ink on top of this. Wherever you have the inscription, that comes out as a white color. And then wherever there is a stone, it comes in this thing. This is a regular practice which is followed for hundreds of years to read inscription stones. So there is one reference that I want to talk about. In 1915, there's one person by name B.L. Rice, and then a couple of his assistants, including one Mr. Nasimachar. They went around documenting over 9,000 inscription stones in the Karnataka region, the old Mysore region. He was a chief archaeologist that time in 1915. Almost like 20 years of exercise, they went around documenting over 9,000 inscription stones across Karnataka. And in that book, they published a book called Epigraphia Carnatica. They had like so many volumes. In that book, they listed over 150 inscriptions in Bangalore. So Uday was using these inscription stones. Uday was using this book as a reference and then retracing those inscription stones. And I was part of the documenting team who went with them. And then, like Uday was, like Srikumar was mentioning, I got a grant also to do this documentation from Sahapedia. It's called the Sahapedia Frames Grant in 2018. So you see these four people. There's an auto driver. There's a plumber. These are some of these people who are not so rich to do something, to be part of this kind of exercise, but they were so much interested to know about their own local history. Because everybody, when the moment you build, you show a palace, yeah, we just directly connect it to British or some castle in UK or some palace in some place. But these inscription stones are giving local history, because every inscription stone they build in a temple or in some place, they give the local history. This particular inscription says a place name called Singapura. These people belong to this place, and they were so much impressed to see Singapura is so old, almost 500 years old, 800 years old. They were thrilled to know Singapura name existed 800 years old, because all our when development happens, all these old names they set up as a new layout or a new something. So these guys, they also lost this particular thing, their city name, to some other layout. So they were so impressed to know about Singapura as a village. So you can see another inscription from Tindulu. This is from Kodigihalli. All these inscriptions were on the road, and luckily, because of the involvement of this team and also the Archaeological Survey of India, they were moved to a safe location now, right? This is a funny inscription, I would say. This one that you see on the right side, people go, it's a hero stone actually. People go dug around this place, during Amavasya or during these Purnami days, thinking that they will get some kind of, gold or something under this. They keep moving this place around and then keep digging this place inside somebody's farm. On the left that you see is a small heritage walk that was arranged by Intac. This is again a Telugu inscription that you can see. This is a Telugu inscription. So this is again dating back to 1200s and 1300s. Almost 700 years back, you have Telugu in Bangalore, right? This is again connected to Shivaji Maharaj, and then whose brother is mentioned in this inscription. Though Shivaji is not mentioned, Shivaji's brother is mentioned in this inscription stone in Malleshwaram. All right, this is the Tindlu one, which is taken from another place to this placement of this place. And this one again, 1600s Vijayanagar inscription. Who we see is Rajiv, who is also part of another group called Revival Revival Heritage Group. So he again goes about searching for these inscription stones and conservation of heritage and all that. This is again a very interesting story. This madam who you see here, she used to be helping people in a school some 20 kilometers from her house, very close to Electronic City. One fine day, somebody said some lorry has come to take some stone and then they want to carry it. They said it is a dump. This statue which you see, the stone that you see next to her, somebody wanted to carry it and then put it in a dump. So somebody called from there saying, okay, madam, this stone they are loading. She said, no, I'll come now, I'll collect it. So it's a beautiful inscription which is which carries 800-year-old history, which is lying in her house now. At least I'm happy that she could save this inscription stone from the demolition. This is a very important inscription stone, the one that you see in the center. This is preserved by Intac, which was lying in the gutter in the side somewhere on side of a temple, Beguru temple. This has a mention of Bengaluru for the first time. So everybody in Bangalore, if you ask Bangalore, how old is Bangalore? These guys will say it is 500 years old, 450 years old. Kempegowda built it, all those stories. But obviously, yes, Kempegowda built the modern Bangalore city. But Bengaluru existed even before that. This inscription is from 890, almost 1,100 plus years old is Bangalore. 890 is the date for this particular inscription, which says Bengaluru. For the first time, they found this, and this was discovered in 1915 itself when B.L. Rice and the Narasimhachar, they went about searching these places and then they found this. But even today, we still have this Bendakaluru story of Bangalore. People talk about, Veeraballala coming into this, and then one old lady giving some boiled beans, and then again, Kempegowda story. All those exist, but we don't know whether this Bengaluru was a big city then. But of course, the modern Bengaluru was built by Kempegowda, right? So this is another important inscription stone in a temple in Madiwala. It used to be called as Madavalagam at some point of time in Tamil. So this particular inscription again reinstates that Bengaluru name existed even before that. I just wanted to give this. This says, if you see this inscription stone, the fifth line, fifth word, it says Vengalur, right? If you know Kannada and Tamil, the kind of the transfers, right? Palu becomes Halu, Verlu becomes Berlu, right? Your finger in this one is Berlu. So Bengaluru in Tamil, it is Vengalur. So this is from you can see this 1248. This inscription is 1248 inscription. Anybody can read Kannada or Tamil or English, you can easily understand how this 3rd March 1248, this place called Vengalur existed in this place. I just mentioned in this inscription stone. So I thought when I was in association with these inscription stones of Bangalore team, I got to learn so much more about Bangalore, my own city, which I was living for 16 years now. And so these things give me a lot of thrill to document and then, to move on. This is again a Tamil inscription, which is almost 18 lines, 19 line script from there to here is what we're just like pointing to. Right? This is from a Domblur temple, a lot of inscription which says Tommaluru in this. And if I can just read for one line, it says Raja Raja Sora Valanattu Tombalurana Desimanika Pattinattu it says Desimanika Pattanam is another name for Domlur, and it belongs to the Rajaraja Sora's land in the 12th century. Right. So this is another inscription, which is again an interesting Tamil inscription. I want to say this states a place called Senji. Of course, it's not the Senji which is near Tiruvannamalai. This Senji is a town which is close to Chennai, near Tiruvallur. So this was done. This inscription was made during the Krishnadevaraya's time, the 13th Vijayanagara kingdoms. From Hampi, their capital is Hampi and Chandragiri, but we still don't know how this Senji is connected. Somebody from Senji is connected to Senji Agaram, is connected to an inscription in Bangalore, which is almost 350 kilometers away. So we're still trying to find out the history behind this. So these kind of thrills, right? So heritage is not just a beautiful building or a lake or a park or all these things. It is also these inscriptions that are very important to be saved. So like I said earlier, heritage and water stories give me the thrill to kind of work on this. So this is again a Rajendra Chola inscription which states about the Patandur lake, and this inscription was given as a proof of existence of this lake in the High Court of Karnataka when somebody wanted to loot this land. Some private parties wanted to take this land, a lake, Patandur lake itself. So they gave this inscription as a proof that this lake existed for almost 1,000 years, right? So one thing these guys did also was Udaya and the team, they kind of 3D scanned this and then made a small memorabilia to raise some funds. This particular thing is from Hebal, which is 750 AD, almost 1,250 years old. This names a person called Kittaya. The Kittaya, he died in this war. It's a hero stone inscription, which is lying in a gutter, and then they could find, if you see this previous image, you can see this portion has a stone and some hero, the statue, and then this was under the ground, and they were able to find this when they're digging up for something else, when the road building or something, and so they could find this text which says Kittaya, who's the person who died in this. He's supposed to be the first Aadhaar card holder of Bangalore, who we know with the name, right? So that way. So we created a memorabilia. It was sold, and then this mantapa was built to put this inscription on top of the mantapa, which is built and opened up only this year in January 2020. Only this opened up on the Pongal day, the Sankranti day. It was opened up for general public to see this inscription in this beautiful thing. I was able to go at 5 o'clock in the morning, just put up some extra flashlights to get this beautiful image of this inscription with the ambience and the light. So this ends, and if somebody wanted to know more about this, they can just follow these inscription stones of Bangalore as a thing. So now I spoke about all this time I was talking about the water stories and the heritage. Srikumar, how are we doing on time?
Yeah. Please continue.
Okay. So this is the last segment that I have. This is the cultural heritage I just want to talk about. Because we've been doing a lot of built heritage, a lot of water stories, a lot of things. So this cultural heritage is also part of any city for that matter. If anybody wanted to document a city, so the cultural heritage, the people are more important. Bangalore being a cosmopolitan thing, it has a lot of things happening. It has even today the new things like the Pride March will happen. At the same time, we'll still continue to have the Karaga and the Pupalakis and the regular events for any religion associated events keep happening. So this particular thing that I was talk about is the Karaga. The first thing is like it's almost 400-year-old tradition which is practiced by this community called Tigalas, who again they are the gardeners, they are the agriculture people who were brought in from Tamil Nadu, and they said they come from Kanchipuram or some districts of Tamil Nadu. So they are hardcore agriculture people. So they are the gardeners. They are the ones who built the lalbags and the agriculture around it. So Tigalas celebrate this festival as a Draupadi cult, the Dharmaraya Swami temple, which is in the Pete, which is very close to the City Market Corporation Circle. That's where they go through these 32 petes of Bangalore, Akkipete, Kabbanpete, Cottonpete, whatever, right? All those 32 petes, including a Muslim dargah, it goes in, this Karaga goes inside and then comes back. So it's a very interesting event. This year, they said they will have a small Karaga, but that is also cancelled because of the COVID. I'm going to show some pictures which I shot in 2009, 2013, and then 2018. A few years I shot. I'll just show some pictures. So this is a statue. This is a car that they have. And before the Karaga comes, the people, the kind of crowd you can expect. You can't just go close to the Karaga, and they have some viras holding. You can see those men who are wearing a garland and then who are bare body, right? Those men will not let you to go close to the Karaga, which is the man who dresses up as a woman, and then he's the one who's carrying this, who is a goddess himself, and then he carries the the flower alangaram and the karagam in his head, right? So you can see these men, a lot of people go around. These people make a lot of noise, sound. All that happens when they're coming. They're announcing the Karaga coming, and they go into Dargah I mentioned. This place that I put is a place where this is a Kusti place. People go there and then practice Kusti. You can see this people, right? This is how the Karaga looks. He's wearing a yellow color sari, and he has a knife in hand, a nice sword kind of a thing in hand. And he always carries a lot of lemon and things like that. People he'll be giving off, and then they keep taking it from the goddess Karaga himself. So this is a very interesting event. It's everybody should see this event during the April Chitra Purnami time. This happens, and it's a must visit festival. So I've documented this over a few years, and I'm also making a film on this now. It's work in progress. So likewise, like I was mentioning, because instead of dragging so much, there is a Kadle Ke Parshe, which is a regular festival. Every November, you get this festival. People from across Karnataka, even from Tamil Nadu, Dharmapuri, some of these districts, Hosur, Krishnagiri, and all, they come with their groundnut harvest, and they sell here in over a week time. It's called the Kadle Ke Parshe, the groundnut festival they organize. I've shot a lot of those festivals. Then the Chitra Sante, which is regular every year, which is happening in Bangalore. During the end of the year or the early January time on the Kumar Kripa Road, which is the Chitrakala Parishad, on that road to Chitrakala Parishad. Chitra Sante is an important festival that everybody should visit and must visit and all that. So we also have this Pride March. One of the early Pride Marches just after Kolkata and Delhi. Bangalore had the Pride March, the gay lesbian marches, the LGBT gang, which involves this walk, fighting against this 370 and all that. So that I shot a lot more, many years, documenting year after year. Then you have this Pupalaki is happening in Alsur, and then a lot more places in the East Bangalore, up to Hoskote. We have festivals. We have even festivals in Magadi side, North Bangalore side. A lot more this Pupalaki, the arrangements, they make these flower arrangements of gods and goddesses, and they take them around. Hundreds of these cars kind of a thing was made. I've shot a lot more festivals like the Bengali Association. They does this every year, Durga Puja and then Ganesh Chaturthi. All this as part of my recording process. I keep documenting for many years now. And even these Muharrams and Christmas and everything is important. So we keep going. As a part of the walk, we keep doing. Muharram is another event, though there's a lot of blood involved, but I keep documenting these festivals which are happening around. So, okay, I think I have some more. Quickly, I'll move on. I didn't remember. I thought that's the end of the session, but yeah. So being connected to the advertising world, I wanted to show this one last series of images that is important to show also. I'll quickly scan through. This is called the other side of the billboard. You can see the contrasting messages in this. If you see, this says Idea Rocks India. The billboard, other side, there's somebody who's peeing in front of this billboard. It says Idea Rocks India, right? So these kind of contrast I was looking for and just shooting these billboards. You can see here the railway connecting, and then the railway line and the the network, Vodafone network, and you can see the fashion statement there on the billboard, and then you can see a normal labor class going on this, the kind of contrast. So it says take a holiday, and then there is no holiday for your cows. Every single day we keep milking, and even when they're drying up, we still go take them for an injection, and then we make sure the milk is coming in the next season or whatever, right? There's no holiday for these cows. And the rich and poor contrast, right? The sin and the baby looks, You have a building debris, and then it says Tata Housing, wake up or regret, right? Being a city which is fast developing, you're talking about the building debris dumped, and then wake up or regret. There's a high-end car, and there is no water even to brush up your teeth, right? His guy is washing his face, brushing up teeth, using this dumped water on the, building apartment construction. Likewise, I went about shooting a lot more, and this series I started in 2014. I shot these images, but suddenly last year, when the billboards were removed, when the flex printing was banned in Bangalore, I went out just to see what are the changes happening in the city. So this is 2014 and 2019, revisiting these other side billboard, right? So you can just see how, what are the kind of changes that happened between 2014 and 19. I'll just quickly scan through this billboard. Similar thing. The cows still exist, but the billboard doesn't have anything. There's no flex involved in this. You can see the same billboards. They used to have some builders living in this house, but after the building came up, and they all moved out, and then there's only a small tin sheet exists. This billboard was completely cut and thrown out of this space, and you can see a big high-rise building there. This building is also gone. Now, last week, 2 days back, when I went to this side of town, I could see there's a big construction coming up in this plot. This empty plot that you see, there's a car parked. There's a big construction coming up in this place. So this is again another billboard. So I went about searching for these billboards, revisiting these billboards. You can see how the kind of construction happened. They used to have something else, the pipes existed there. Now you can see empty. This again in a symmetry. This is a garage. There's a two-wheeler garage, and you can see a two-wheeler advertisement board there. This is a symmetry with tax advertisement. That time, even if you're dying, even in a deathbed, you still have to pay your taxes. That's the kind of irony that I thought when I shot this picture. But the same shot, when I went back again, the tree has grown really bigger, and there is no flex in that. So this went on to become a published story in 2014-15, and then we had this as an exhibition also. This Lance Krona, he was mentioning about Lance Krona and the Pingya. Those two exhibitions carried this set of images, and then I can show you some of the catalogs which carried my images of these billboards. Right. So this is an interesting thing. So what I almost came to the conclusion of the story. So we have stories everywhere for any photographer, anybody who's living in this city or not necessarily in the city, any city, you have stories everywhere. You have stories everywhere. For example, this set of images you can see. I shot almost 150 pumps, hand pumps like this. This is part of a series of images that I want to make, some 30 images every day, one photo. There's a group of people in Madras, they said InstaFest. They started something called as InstaFest. Every day you have to put one photo. And so I started shooting one photo every day and started posting. I found these hand pumps, which we kind of forgotten hand pumps. Everybody wants to have the water coming in their tap, and nobody wants to go and pump this, and it's all kind of ruined. So you have these stories everywhere, these kind of stories everywhere. I went about shooting a lot more across Bangalore, wherever I go. It's a continuous process. Even today, if I go and shoot some pictures, I want to just go and see wherever I find, I shoot, right? That way. It's very interesting to do. So now the recent project, the last project, the latest project that I'm working on, I'll end with this maybe in like next few minutes. We can open up for the questions. This is 2020 onwards. I call this series as the Monumental Selfies. In fact, I have to thank Naufal, Srikumar, Vinay, and the team at Honeycomb for helping me with processing these images to make this amazingly beautiful and print for the exhibition that I had in February 2020. We just had an exhibition in February, and after that the lockdown started. So I couldn't shoot anything after. I shot some 40 places so far, and I call this as Monumental Selfies. We had this exhibition called as Mentality. It is about our mental thinking and things like that. I've read a series, a story, a write-up called write-up on the selfies, which said selfie is also a mental disorder, because everybody goes on, wherever they go, they want to take in front of dead bodies, we take selfies. That's the kind of development we moved on. So I thought I'll go to a monument and shoot a selfie. I put a camera and shoot myself, right? That's what was the plan. So I shot this. I don't know whether it is a mental disorder now, but yeah, I shot this in a cemetery, in a Hindu cemetery in Indiranagar. This is Someshwara temple in Alsur. You can see this is the Hard Rock Cafe. It's an alcohol place. I intentionally kind of moved and created this little kind of a ghosty look. This is the Kaban Park. This is the right side image. What you see is a Dobighat near Alsur. You can see the high-rise building behind. This is Kaban Park metro station. This is the what do you call the what is this? The Corporation Circle. So this is the 5th tower which is built. Actually, Kempegowda built 4 towers, they say. During Kumaraswamy Chief Minister term, they built this tower as the 5th KG tower, Kumaraswamy Gowda Tower or something we can call it. And this is an important place also where I went ahead, putting the camera on a tripod and then using my mobile light to kind of light it up like taking a selfie. This is a very important tower which used to be part of this Great Trigonometric Survey. Britishers did this project 120 years to map India. So Bangalore plays a major role to pilot this project, and then the project started from Madras. In fact, in the 18th century, 120 years they documented. They used this triangulation process, and they mapped India. They found the shape of India. They used this process to find out the area of the whole of India. Originally, they thought India is really big size, but when they mapped it, they kind of lost so much of land. But anyways, they charged taxes and then they made a lot of money from this process. So this process started in Bangalore, piloted in Bangalore, started from Madras, and it went on to find the height of Everest. It ended at the Everest project, and the guy who involved in the process after the boss started, and then he died, and his subordinate who started again continuing this process, and his name is Everest. The Everest named after him, right? So that process, that this tower, it used to be a big tower which is demolished, which is ruined, and there's a small hillock which still remains there. So I thought it's an important place to shoot and to show this. So that comes to the end of my project, my session today. I think we kind of extended by 10 minutes or something extra. So I'm just showing the heritage exists everywhere, and you and I are responsible. You and I have to do something to save this, conserve this, to document this. Everybody should take, because today, everybody, I would say 50% of Indian population holds a nice smartphone in this country. Everybody is a photographer. Every second person is a photographer. So everybody can create some nice imagery collection for your own thing, right? Your own life you can document, and which can be shown for the future generation to see, right? So I end at this note. I've given my Instagram, Facebook, Flickr. You can check my work also on my website. So can I stop this screen share, Srikumar?
Yes, PV.
Yeah, let me just stop the screen share.
Yeah.
Then you can see
Yeah.
me.
Thank you, PV, for this wonderful journey of Bangalore. I mean, we were able to see a lot of unseen things. A lot of people must be from Bangalore, but most of them are unaware about the things that you just showed us through. And it was really, really wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, PV. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, Srikumar,
Yeah,
tell you.
yeah. And people, participants, if you have any questions for PV, please ask.
You can just put it on the chat box or.
Yeah.
I think maybe there is one question. Your professor was,
Okay. I think okay. The professor asked, how do you select themes for photography as you come across happenings? Okay, so it depends on our interest. I mean, I would say, like I said originally also, I'm more interested in heritage and things related to water. So these two things, I always look for something happening or some kind of a story that I can build on. So the lake story is never ending. I still shoot. I continue to shoot. The heritage story is also never ending because there are a lot of changes happening. Every time there is a change happening, we go and document. That way, it's very interesting, important to take up stories which connect to you, which is close to your heart. Otherwise, you can't pursue this for a longer time. I keep shooting this for 10 years, 8 years, 12 years. If you don't have this interest, even if you're shooting at home, right? I mean, if you like your kid, if you like people, each other, then only you'll be able to shoot. Otherwise, you'll not be able to pursue this for a longer time. So the story should connect to you and should be personal to all of us. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor, for that question. So I'm going to take this other question. Okay, so sir, you advise the start of AG, okay, 40 and turn it to a career. Of course, any age you can start. We are still in the mid-career, and then most of us, there are a lot more photographers who started even later. We have examples even in Bangalore, right? We had examples in Bangalore who started really late. There is one photographer whose name is Anand Sharan. If you know of him, he was somebody who was a techie, who was working in economic world, and then at some point of time only he thought, okay, so he needed to become a photographer, and then he started late. So there are a lot more good examples. As long as you have this passion and some kind of a support for a few years to start with, right? When you're starting up your career, if you have some kind of a support to back you up, at least for the first couple of years, if you have some kind of a savings before you get some kind of a full-term job, then it makes sense to venture into at any age. Right? You have a lot of international examples also. A lot more people. In fact, Warren Buffett started his the bigger career at a later stage. Right. So I'm seeing another question. How do you go hunting for the stone inscription? Okay, Prashant. In fact, I have these people who are the team is a big team. It's not just me, but we have this book. Called the Epigraphia Carnatica, which is a good reference. It's a very good reference. It gives some kind of an explanation. It won't say this nagar, this layout, it exists. It will give some old name. 1915 it was documented. So it says some Tombaluru or some Vinnamangala or something which is a old name. You have to kind of follow up with somebody who knows these old places and go back and then trace back and trace back and trace back. And talk to a lot of these elderly people who must be knowing or who may not, who must have lived in that area. And that ways they were able to trace back. And I am lucky to shoot these places because I didn't go in search of any of these places for the first time. I didn't discover anything so far. But there are a lot more people who, like I mentioned, there's one Mohan Nayak, who's a plumber, and then Srinivas, who's an auto driver. They rediscovered two or three stones in Bangalore. So they were more interested in reading those and then tracing back those places. So I was lucky because of the technology. This ISB team, the Inscription Stones of Bangalore, they put these inscriptions, including put in their Google Maps. So I can take a motorcycle and then go, and then exactly it takes me to the right spot. I could go and trace back all these places and shoot it. That way, it's an adventure. Anyways, it's an adventure. You will be still searching for here and there, but you can still find it. And that way, it is easy to get this. Artificial rain, no, Professor. I never, I could not shoot in the things. That's what. So I kind of being in the non-photography world. I'm still calling myself not as a full-time photographer. I'm an advertising guy. I still have clients to handle and things like that. So whenever time permits, only I can do things. When something happens, I may not be able to go and shoot that ways. So finance, yes, you have to manage somewhere, have the backup, and then savings, and then still do some kind of a support system, make some money in something else, and then put it into this to kind of do this. There's one question from Randeep also. How do you store these pictures? Yeah, that's a tough question, $1 million question, because everybody has this, because we end up losing. I used to start with a CD drive, then it went on to DVD drive, then it went on to a 500 GB hard drive. Now it is in 2 TB hard drives. So I have maybe some 40 TB of content, some 25 hard drives I have. I tried to back up twice. At some point of time, it becomes so expensive. now I have this guts. Okay, so let me store something which is important. Maybe some things on Flickr, some of them on some of these online storage, important ones, and the rest of it lies in the hard drive. If I lose a hard drive, I lose it. So I have no option in terms of saving these things. But yeah, so a lot of people suggest you take 2 backups, and I have some friends who keep one backup in Mysore and one in Bangalore. Even in case of earthquake or something, they still save those images. It is like it's an expensive affair. I would say it's a very expensive affair, but it is important. If you feel it is very important, try to keep at least those important images in some kind of a medium. It could be your own Flickr account, at least 1,000 pictures, 2,000 pictures, 5,000 pictures you can save in your medium that way. Good to see you, Professor. Happy to see you. Wonderful. So any other questions?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, a few words from you, Naufal, would be great.
It's okay. Thank you, PV. First of all, accepting our invite and was ready for this webinar at this time. I hope all are very hungry. It's almost 9:30, and I may convey my thanks to to all the participants who had registered and attended. And sorry for the last moment little glitch. Maybe we'll improve next time definitely.
No, that is the technology.
Thank you all.
We always have this. Yeah, we depend on the technology, and then this technical glitch is unavoidable.
Correct.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much to Naufal and team, Vinay for completely following up, and Naufal for inviting me and Srikumar to have this conversation around. So it's a great opportunity for me also to show this, like you said, unseen, less seen images to the world. And happy to have some of my friends and including my professor also in the session. Thanks so much again. Thanks to all participants who came in.